I'm looking for something to make a pair of scissors and maybe make this pair of scissors a little bit more easily. I've got these 6mm rods here, and I think they're medium carbon, but they could also be high carbon. I didn't mark them. That's a mistake. I've made at least a half dozen pairs of scissors, all okay, nothing outstanding. I started on a piece of this 6mm rod just to get an idea, just to see how the dimensions work out, and you can see me tracing it here, then flipping it over lets me know how it's going to align. The finger loops should touch and act as a stop, while the cutting ends mate perfectly together, and you can see that's not the case here. So I need to do another bend to make this work out better. This is the last scissor that I made, and it is really nice. It looks really nice, it feels nice. However, it's got some problems. For starters, the finger loops are not completely round and smooth, and so when using this scissor, it kind of hurts a little bit. But the main issue is the pivot is too far back, and then you can see here there's no cutting edge there when I open this scissor, so you don't have complete cutting coverage. However, the cutting edges that are there are very sharp, and it's very durable, this pair of scissors. As I recall, I made it from bearing steel. This pair of scissors took me a while to make, and so the goal today is to use this rod to make a good scissor quicker. Knowing this rod is likely medium carbon and so not ideal for a pair of scissors, that's okay. I just want to get my design and my steps down. And by the way, this will be a right-handed pair of scissors. I sold out of these bending jigs, and I'm having more made, but I've changed the whole design just a little bit. Since these are identical halves, I just want to compare them every now and then. I want to give a big shout out to Steve Frazier for his recent very generous donation to the channel. He recently purchased some tools and added quite a bit extra to the total, and I really appreciate it. Thanks very much. So you can see this is a similar situation to what I showed in the beginning. I need to put in another bend in order to get everything to mate up properly. You can see here that I'm pretty good now. But as it mates up well, I now need to flatten those areas just a little bit more. As I've said, I've probably made 6 pairs of scissors of varying styles, and I probably need to make 25 pairs of one style in order to get my steps down well. In this video, every time I say pair of, I keep wanting to say tongs, and so if I make that mistake, well, you can forgive me. This kind of correcting work wouldn't be necessary if I had my steps down pat. But to be honest, when making a pair of scissors, at least from my experience, there's a lot of grinding involved, so you can always make some adjustments at that point. Remember, you can always remove some material, you just can't add, or at least not easily. You'll see that I like to use a nut and bolt to join the halves so that I can get everything lined up. The nut and bolt are just temporary. It cuts, but it's got a ways to go still. So here's where most people will put a specific degree of bevel on each outside face. However, for me, I just like to round this off, just create radius that mates up with the cutting edge. This may be a little bit unusual, but it's worked well for me, and I have seen it on other scissors here in Taiwan. So in order to work well as a pair of scissors, each blade has to have a very slight inward bend. Near to the pivot area and at the very ends of the blades should touch, but in between should have a very slight curved distance. That is, if you carefully sight the scissors while holding vertically, you should be able to see just a crack of daylight right around the middle point of the blades. As it is, you can see the ends of my scissor here splay away, and that's not going to work ideally. I've seen others hammer on the blades cold to put that curve in, but that's never worked well for me. I just heat up slightly and just bend very gently. So at this point, it feels and sounds better, and it also cuts better. Knowing this is likely medium carbon steel, I heat treat by quenching in oil to harden some, and I don't do any tempering. So for me with this pair of scissors, this is the final sharpening. I use a 400 grit flap disc. Again, with the outside radius, I'm just trying to get that to mate up with the inside face and come to as fine a line as possible. You can use something like a magnifying glass, but at the end of the day, your finger will tell you a lot. I'm using a copper rivet and steel washers. I like to hold the washers with my fingernails and then use my vise to press everything together just so everything gets held in place. At this point, it's working very acceptably, but it can work even better. Just a couple strokes each side with this piece of carbide, and that should improve the performance further still. I'm ready to declare this simple scissor design a success. It may not be beautiful to look at, but eventually form will follow function. Eventually I will embellish this style a bit. We got a lot more fooling around to do.